Welcome, movie lovers. Today we go back in time to a story as old as... Fuck, let's start again. It's a damn tongue twist.
I saw what you were trying to do, and I liked it.
Just tell Steven to trim that. Welcome, movie lovers. Today we go back in time for a tale as old as time as we dissect the 1991 version of Beauty and the Beast. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Do not be confused. We are not yet doing the 2017 version of Beauty and the Beast. We are going back in time, revisiting a classic. And we have Dimitri Panos today on the panel.
Hey, movie fans. Very excited about this.
Dimitri was actually alive when this movie came out, unlike one of our panelists, Becca Brown.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, listen, so was I. So was I, thankfully, okay?
But I saw it as a kid, so that's what counts. My parents showed it to me when I could, comprehend, kind of.
That is the voice of Becca Brown.
Yeah.
And Marisa Serafini, who was also alive when this movie came out.
But did
Yes,
you
I
see it
was.
at the theaters when it came out?
I did
did
not.
not.
Fair
Not with-
enough. I was
not
too
with my
poor to go to the
parents.
movies then, to be fair. It's a true story.
Yes, not with my parents. But I love Beauty and the Beast. It is literally my all-time favorite Disney film. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to talk about this film. You had no idea.
Well, as always, I don't think we're going to spoil much, but I'll give the spoiler warning anyway. If you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Go see the movie.
What are you doing with your
Or
life?
just at least,
That.
you know what? Be pleasantly surprised when you see the new one. But overall impressions, we'll start with our welcome guest for today, Becca Brown.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
We're going to try to do as little laughing today as possible, Becca.
Serious, Becca.
I just got really excited there, so that's why I squeaked. But I was watching it last night, and I realized, just how naive I was as a kid to a lot of Disney movies, and the storylines that are, within. I understood and comprehended a lot more.
Are you talking about the broom and the them making?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So
Yes.
okay. So there's sexual undertones you weren't quite privy to when you were 6 years old.
Yeah, no, I didn't understand. And then I was like, that seems a little PG-13 to me.
But okay, talk
But
about.
what did you think of the movie?
Well, yeah, your love when
thoughts?
you were 6 years old. What made you fall in love with this movie?
Music.
Music.
The music for sure, because I'm a person who loves music, and I can listen to the album on repeat all day.
All right. Marisa.
I love this film. I think that the moral lesson and the beauty of it all is that the thought of that inner beauty outshines everything else, whether it be the physical appearance and who you really are on the inside. I think that's such a great message that is still relevant today, even 25 years later from this film. And I really related to Belle, the character, because she was a bookworm, she was that shy one, and I also a big bookworm, and I didn't talk to people. I was kind of weird and considered the outcast, growing up. So I completely related to Belle, and plus the music is just great. I've personally been part of 2 different Beauty and the Beast productions, and so I've literally have heard this story over and over and over again, at least more than 100 times just in production, and I never once got tired of it. And I realized, you know what, I love this story, and even the film where it all, originated from, I think is brilliant. And the fact that I can literally listen and watch this movie over and over and over again and still not get sick of it, yeah, it's a strong film with a great message.
All right. Dimitri.
Yeah, I mean, when this movie came out, this came out at such an amazing time for movies. Movies are made for fun, and this meant so much for Disney. Ironically, since you both mentioned movies, or music, I'm sorry, this movie was never intended to be a musical. In its opening, in its early production stages, and it is a tale as old as time. Beauty and the Beast is a story which has been known even more so than Little Mermaid. And you have to think about the time that this was coming out as well, and what was going on at Disney as far as their regime. Michael Eisner was the head of the company. He had brought in Jeffrey Katzenberg, okay? Katzenberg, who is still relevant in animation today with DreamWorks Animation running that outfit. But basically, Disney itself is not the Disney of today, okay? I'm not sure Beauty and the Beast would be made today. It could be, I mean, because of John Lasseter taking over the animation things. But today, Disney is for lack of better words, it's a factory, okay?
Yeah.
They're a factory. They're a franchise factory. They have Marvel. They've got Lucasfilms. They have their Pixar brand, and so we're getting Cars 3. Thankfully, the animation brand, which hasn't made, we've got Frozen, we've had Tangled, we've had some really good movies coming out of there, which is blending hand-drawn, okay? But that's because of John Lasseter. But back in the 80s, back in the 90s, when Michael Eisner was running the company, it's hard to believe that at the time Disney was releasing R-rated movies. They had a whole slew of them. From their Touchstone division, which was releasing movies such as Stakeout, Outrageous Fortune, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, okay? These are all R-rated movies. Pretty Women, people seem to forget, is an R-rated movie, And none of the movies that I just mentioned spawn sequels. This wasn't about franchise. This was about being creative. This was coming up with a concept. Well, they took that idea and brought that into animation. In fact, there's a great story where Michael Eisner, upon hiring Katzenberg to come in, brings him into his office. He goes, "Look out that window. You see that building over there?" It's like, "Yeah." He goes, "That's our animation building." It's like, "Okay." He goes, "You like animation?" It's like, "You sure?" He goes, "Good, you're going to fix it." And he's like, that was like his first week on the job. He's like, "Okay." And with Beauty and the Beast, it's just a culmination. It was a passing of the guard. I mean, Disney is always noted for their wonderful animation, right? From Bambi, from Snow White, which won the Academy Award, which actually, if it hadn't become popular, we wouldn't have Disney, So Snow White, Pinocchio, Dumbo, all of these, to Lady and the Tramp, but animation was waning. It really was. And what Disney was able to do with the likes of Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which burst through and created new technology for movies. And then they're like, hey, this is a viable source. And then thankfully The Little Mermaid hit. And The Little Mermaid was a beautiful film, and it combined music. It was a musical. And so leading into this new regime of young animators taking over from the old, being taught from the old, coming in, and the collaboration put for Beauty and the Beast and for Disney was amazing. Like, I remember when Beauty and the Beast came out, the accolades being thrown this movie, being nominated for Best Picture at a time when there were only 5 Best Picture nominees. And for this to be one of the nominations, what it did for Disney, what it did to boost animation, it really clearly, the movie is enthralling. And today, it still is beautiful to watch. The music is still as catchy, whether it's Gaston and things like Gaston, or whether it's Belle, or Tale as Old as Time. The movie has stood the test of time. Amazingly so, and it doesn't lose its luster. In fact, I think it just becomes better with age. So,
well, I like the sort of completion of this movie that it completes Disney's mission. He wanted to make it in the 30s and the 50s, but he never went about it. Some people cite that the 47 version of Beauty and the Beast from France kind of not prohibited him, but he was like, okay, it's been told, so I don't want to tell my version now. And so, I think that's what obviously prevented it from there. And then so now it kind of completes that circle, even though he never got to see it.
Right.
But that is an interesting fact for me, is that the original story of what Beauty and the Beast actually is to what the Disney version is, much like most of Disney, two completely different things. I mean, the original, what fascinates me, is very much like a Cinderella story where she's got sisters and they're kind of mean to her and whatnot. And it's interesting how they weaved it and made it completely different yet beautiful in the same sense. And I think I would personally actually would love to see a blending of the two, because I think there's something beautiful in both of them. But that's just my own personal want, I guess.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the thing about this particular film, because we had the lyricist Howard Ashman, that this whole film is basically a metaphor for his life, which for people who may not know, but he actually found out he had AIDS at the beginning stages of this film, and when it was written into the songs and the lyrics and just the overall meaning of this, the inner beauty, because it was more so he was afraid of how other people would perceive him, especially back in the 80s when AIDS and HIV was such a taboo thing. People didn't want to talk about it, and he was afraid of how the society would see him with this, and it really just translates as a metaphor for this film.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too is Howard Ashman coming on board along with Mencken. Like, they had just great success with Little Mermaid. Okay. And Little Mermaid 2 is the movie that really started, where people started to pay attention to Disney and animated movies again. You know, you can go to the Little Mermaid, young and old, and you walk out feeling enchanted. Okay, you walk out feeling good. And it also it planted that seed, which Beauty and the Beast did so well, is making a free spirit princess. You know, coming up with a woman character or female character that's going to think on her own, get through life, and be a take charge kind of person. Which Belle, like, just takes it up a few notches from Ariel. But Mencken and Ashman together as a team for writing partner and music. You're right, the metaphor for what that is. But again, the music is just so beautiful, and it's definitely one of those few animated movies that I remember seeing in a theater where, like, after like the opening number, Belle, like, people applauded in the theater. You know, and there are stories, we'll get into it a little bit more, like where it played in the New York Film Fest, and it wasn't even a finished print. But people were applauding, and you knew that you had this magic, this movie magic that Howard Ashman, really contributed a lot to. He, at the very least, he was able to see the work in progress print before passing away. But Marisa, I think you really bring it. You know, you hit it on the head. For him, it was a metaphor, and the people during production, they had no idea that he was sick at all. No idea whatsoever. You know, he kept that.
Well, think about it. There's three things at the time, right? Becca, I'm sure would be hard pressed, but this was, you were either gay, you were a drug addict, or what was the third thing? Shit.
Sex with monkeys. Well, we're talking AIDS. Right?
Yeah.
AIDS.
That was the stereotype. Yeah, it was either you were gay, you did drugs, or sex with monkeys.
Yeah.
And obviously we know that to be very not true today, but that it was such a it was such a taboo, to borrow your word, disease that people didn't talk about it and they didn't know anything about it.
No.
So I can imagine him not saying anything.
Yeah.
For fear of that.
Yeah, Phil, you brought up an interesting point too regarding story. You know, I believe it was the producer Don Hahn who talked about story-wise. What do you do with Beauty and the Beast? Because so much of it is, you have your woman, you have your beast, they're at a dinner table. Will you marry me? No. Leaves. Right? There's not a whole hell of a lot going on in the story. How do you turn this into a feature? And how do how dark do you want to go? How dark do you not want to go? And this is all before bringing in music. You know, what are you going to do? And all the iterations just never really worked. And there were so many changes in the creative gene pool, let's call it.
Yeah.
People were getting fired like, nah, this isn't working. And even the directors,
Yeah.
to me, that's like they were hired on as interim directors. They weren't even like
Garrett Truesdell and Kirk Wise.
they weren't called directors for the longest time until they deemed it okay. Well, you're going to be the directors of this. You'll be called, even though they were doing that job.
Well, here's what this is kind of new to me, but it was the first movie to use a screenwriter for an animated feature. In Disney, at least. And this was this typically they do it through storyboards rather than scripted form. And interesting, I didn't quite understand that because
You're talking Linda Wolverton.
yeah, simply because to me, animated or not, it should have a script, you know, and then you storyboard. I don't know. It's partly because that's the way I've been taught it my whole life. But it just seems it's like such a strange idea that you wouldn't have a script for an animated movie.
Well, yeah, and it was interesting. I just listened to an interview with the director of the Kung Fu Panda movies, and even though that's DreamWorks, that's not Disney. But even she mentioned in most animated films, if not all of them, they usually just storyboard everything out scene by scene, and then you kind of put it together like a puzzle, and then at the end you get a final result, such as your movie. They usually originally don't start with the script; it's more like the concept ideas of putting scenes together, and I think it's interesting that. And I think also that's why this film works so well, because there was already a fleshed out story that they had to work off of that made it more complete.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I couldn't imagine like not having a script to go off of and just like drawing something out on like for scene by scene.
Well,
organization wise.
And part of the reasoning for that is, and Linda Wolverton learned this early on, especially when you talk about, I believe it might have been Chris Sanders who was the story editor. So you come up with storyboards, you come up with your ideas to what you want. So this movie, well, a couple of things happened here. The animators were kicked off the lot. They were kicked out of their Cush building in Burbank, and they were moved into a warehouse, okay, that was off the lot. And so you would figure that, they were like, Jesus, like, we feel like the bastard stepchilds, like, what's going on here? But the blessing and the curse of that is that it actually drew, pun intended, it drew the animators closer together.
Physically,
And they had, basically they could be a little more casual, a little more lax, because they weren't within the studio system. So creatively, which is what you want, they meshed. They just got along together very well, okay? And this is a brand new crop of animators coming in. When you're doing a story for an animated movie, a lot of it changes constantly, because a lot of it's all storyboarded out. And it's like, well, what if we do this, okay, coming in? And what if we change the scene so it's on this perspective, whatever? So that means there's going to be a change in the storytelling, right? So when Linda Wolverton comes along, she has this script for Beauty and the Beast. This is my script? Okay. And constantly, every day she came in, she noticed, she would, wait, that's not in the script. Wait, how are you doing this? She was getting into fights with like the story editor all the time. He's like, well, no, we had to change this. We had to do this. And she's like, no, but that's my script. You can't do that. She, from an animation perspective, she had no idea how that world worked. The head of animation at the time, who Katzenberg had running it, he basically said, look at you guys, I'm putting you in the same office. And they're like, okay, maybe not the best idea, but it turned out to be the mega best idea, because each learned from the other. And Linda Wolverton's like going, when he would take her around, she was just going, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. She worked, she adapted her talents to look what she was able to, look what they were able to accomplish. And she got it. They became the best of friends and working colleagues. And to me, that's such a great story because it could have gone the other way. If she'd stuck to her guns, you know, we wouldn't have gotten the Beauty and the Beast that we get today.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And good for her, especially being like the first female screenwriter on an animated film that became such as successful as this one. But even back then, when like, it is still kind of a relevant issue today, but like women back then, especially in the industry, that's so hard to stand your ground, working against animators that she hasn't really worked with, and just in the industry itself, being that the one strong woman to stand up for herself.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I agree with you. And I think because she was in animation and because they were off lots, because they were in this special, let's call it this soup of like everybody having to work together. So she was able to check her ego aside for a little bit and say, oh, okay, I understand. Yeah, and the story editor is able to check his, you know, they all collaborated to do that. But you're right. You know, there were some, as I heard, very passionate discussions about which way the story was going to go. But you're right, Marisa. She was a woman, and she wasn't an animator. And you know, being a screenwriter, not the easiest thing at the time. Some could argue that today, but she stayed through, and she did what any good person should do. I want to do this for the good of the project. I'm going to stick with this. And she came out being a much better, more creative person for it, as well as the story editor and everybody else.
Well, so interesting. It kind of reminds me of Saving Mr. Banks, that movie, in the sense because that movie's sort of fictionalized behind the scenes look at Mary Poppins, and you know, it's just interestingly enough, like with that movie, Mary Poppins, the end result is so fantastic, but maybe the making of it not the most pleasant at all times. You know, and so obviously the reason why that movie was made is because the going was rough, and it would be interesting to see sort of I don't know, Saving Mr. Beast.
Saving
Because it is, I do find similarities in both stories.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, the historical context of Mary Poppins at the same, it's just a lot of similarities to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that because even in, to keep talking about Saving Mr. Banks, like she stuck so hard because she wanted to make sure one character had the proper ending, and it was more of an ode to her personal father in her real life, and that just adds heart and sentimentality that makes the ending more impactful. And I think that was kind of the same thing with this film, with like make these characters true to themselves and have heart and also sentimentality. Because I feel like if someone else changes it might change the tonality of characters and just how the movie ends and how we remember it at the end of it. I think like had she not stuck to her guns, it would have been a different film.
What I love to, you know, to an earlier point of yours, Dimitri, you said, you know, how do you sort of flesh out the story when you basically have two people? Will you marry me? Will you marry me?
No.
Well,
no.
What I like, you know, that they were able to incorporate elements from the 47 version, and with the notion of if you've ever seen that movie, there's like hands moving in the castle, so the castle becomes animated.
Right.
And it too has sort of this villain character, whatever you want to call him, and that essentially becomes all the items in the castle, and that becomes Gustav in this version. So they just took those ideas and made them more prominent.
It's funny because like watching it as a kid versus watching it as an adult, I kept thinking about how like watching it as a kid that I always thought of Beast more as a villain than Gaston, and now I think of it as in the opposite way.
So you think the Beast is more of a villain?
A villain, yeah, but now I'm like, oh, wait.
Yeah. Well,
because he was
Gaston
scary to me.
Gaston is the antagonist.
Yeah,
in this film.
Absolutely.
Well, I actually, quick. I do want to talk about, we're talking about the history, but I want to go into opinion just for one second. Comparing the Beast and Gaston, because in a way, they're both narcissistic. They're both were at one point good looking, right? Their heads are so inflated they think everybody works for them. So, it's interesting. Like I do want to know, like, why is the Beast better than him?
Oh, I could answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna defer ladies first, but
okay. Well, the thing is, it's like when you watch Gaston and the Beast like side by side, really, is that Gaston, his head was inflated, but you never saw moments of him like actually being a good person, or him caring about someone else, or him like having that moment of softness. Whereas the Beast, you saw how he treated people. You saw how he kind of like had a soft side. He gave Belle a room. He cared for her well-being at the end, even though he came across gruff. But you saw those soft moments, and he has heart underneath it. He has those layers. Gaston was just a one-note character, where the Beast was way more layered. To know that at the end, Beast is redeemable, and in the end, he becomes the protagonist because you're rooting for him.
I gotta take this a step further. The main difference is there was no curse placed on Gaston. Okay, the Beast becomes the Beast because he's being punished. Okay, he was as bad as Gaston was, but the whole reason why he is a beast and why that becomes an enchanted castle is because the old woman wants to see his character, and his character comes through in flying colors. He's an ass. He is not a nice person, the Beast, okay? He gets this curse, and he has to live in this castle as this hideous, scary beast. And he learns the reason why he has this sympathy, this empathy towards Belle, is because he's had time of reflection. He's had time alone. He realizes, and this is a thread to the story. He realizes the errors of his ways. He knows that he was a bad person, and he sees that's what I was. But as the Beast, as he matures, as he becomes older, he becomes wiser, and he reads all these books. He has a better sense of what it is to be a good person. Not a good beast, but a good person. So Belle comes along, trades places with Pops, and she is the epitome of beauty, but not just beauty. It comes from within as well. She's headstrong, she's smart, okay? She reads, she loves the library,
She
okay?
empathizes.
And as she learns about the Beast, it's, what? Under that gruff exterior, there is a charming man. There's something charming about this thing. And that's what you fall in love with. It's not just necessarily the looks that are important, but Beast has had time of reflection, where Gaston, nobody's been around to punish him. Nobody's been around to show him the errors of his ways. He was never cursed. He just goes through life thinking he is the best. He is the sexiest, and he is right. He should marry Belle because he's the best man on the planet.
Well, also the thing is, like, no one tells Gaston no.
Yeah,
No one is challenging Gaston. There's a whole freaking musical number dedicated to Gaston. It's like literally everyone reveres him, and that's the thing. Where with Beast, like, people have respect for the Beast, but they also treat him like a human being.
So that's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
And they
Tell
treated
your
Gaston
friends.
like a god.
But they treat him as a human being at the end of the movie. Other than that, that castle and the Beast is something to be feared, where he's trying to shake the reputation of being, fear and loathsome towards people, towards humanity. But he's at that time, and what Belle is able to do is she's able to melt that down, and he has his epiphany. Yeah. He has his arc at the end. That's what makes the ending of the this animated movie so earned and heartfelt and emotional. And again, thematically, it transcends. Like, it brought Disney into the age where adults aren't ashamed to go see animated movies. Like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit did was, it blended the live action, with animation, much like Mary Poppins when you brought up, but it brought it up to, Robert Zemeckis and Company.
Pete's Dragon.
Pete's Dragon.
Yeah.
But it gave a tangibility to the animation. Roger Rabbit was a real character, along with Jessica Rabbit and all the other tunes in Toontown, okay? When you go into Little Mermaid, hand-drawn, it's very beautiful, but we're seeing, they're making leaps and bounds from The Great Mouse Detective, which is an amazing, it's such a good, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, how can you not love The Great Mouse Detective? So good. All these animators worked on these previous films. The Black Cauldron, okay, which, if memory serves, Tim Burton worked on the Black Cauldron. He was a Disney animator. That's what he wanted to do. So by the time they have been honing their talents, they worked on Little Mermaid and now Beauty and the Beast, they're able to take all of their experience to make this beautiful movie that has themes, that transcend kids' movies. To be nominated for Best Picture says, you know what? Dates were going out on this movie without kids. Like men and women were going to Beauty and the Beast on a Saturday night. They'd go to the movies, they'd have dinner, and they'd go, let's go see Beauty and the Beast. The soundtrack was selling amazingly, and so that's what Beauty and the Beast did for Disney, and it led them to do movies like Lion King. Animation for that window meant that it ain't just for kids anymore, and we don't have to be dark to do it. We don't have to be Ralph Bakshi, we don't have to be heavy metal rated R for it to be an adult. We can have a heartwarming movie that thematically and a story that resonates with all ages. So, and that's what Disney was focused upon.
And it teaches all ages like a different life lesson depending on how a person's mind works watching the movie. At any given age, I think.
But Becca, you said something too, and we've all had it happen here. We grow. You've just had a birthday, So with age comes a little bit of wisdom. You could see a movie when you're 10, 12, like Star Wars as an 11-year-old and Star Wars as a 30-something or whatever. It could be two different movies. Yeah. Thematically, you just understand a lot more. You get it. But that, to me, is a sign of a classic.
Or you understand different things each time you rewatch the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
you get more out of it.
Marisa, how old were you when you... Do you remember how old you might have been when you first saw it?
When I first saw it, or like when I comprehended it? There's a difference. So
very true.
I was young, but at least I was alive. Probably when I was younger, when I first comprehended, I was probably 5.
Okay.
When I remember watching it over and over.
Was it one of the first movies that you watched on video or something, or did you see it on cable?
I watched all the Disney movies
Right.
on VHS over and over and over
Right.
again. This one and Pocahontas were the strong females I loved of Disney.
Phil, how about you? Do you recall?
It was about last week.
Fair enough.
Last week.
There you go.
It's true.
Listen, I've seen a lot of there's Disney movies that I've seen, and there's Disney movies I just never saw until later in age.
How did it? Well, then let me ask you this: how did it resonate with you?
For someone who didn't grow up with this story.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Here's the thing. I think there's a difference if this was my first Disney movie versus this is my first time with Beauty and the Beast. Because it has all the, I think it's a great movie. At the same time, something that we talk a lot here on Anatomy of a Movie, the nostalgia, right? So even though I haven't seen this movie, there's elements of nostalgia that you can go back to and be like, oh, it's similar, it's like Aladdin, it's like Little Mermaid, it's like this. And so it puts you at that comfort level.
Sure.
And you're just in.
Right.
Versus, like I said, if I saw it for the very first time and no Disney movies.
Yeah. The other sort of breakthrough in Beauty and the Beast that again led to Disney's godfather foray into things was this. The movie itself, it was one of the first, if not the first, animated movies to incorporate digital technology going forward. The ballroom scene, you know, they set Belle and the Beast into a fully digital ballroom.
I mean, the ceiling.
The chandelier, the ceiling.
Moves, the walls move.
Look, a little bit of dopey trivia, and somebody can double check me on this, but the first movie that I recall, you know, like digital was seeping its way into special effects. You know, you could have seen it as early as Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan with the Genesis effect and such. But when making characters digitally, there's this great movie called The Young Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
Which, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The Young Sherlock Holmes, which had a knight jump from a stained glass window
Chris Columbus.
that Chris Columbus had to sword fight with. And it was, I believe...
Scary as hell.
Yeah, I believe, and again, please, somebody
1980s.
double check me, but I believe that was the first movie that digitized a character, that being the stained glass knight. When we get into Beauty and the Beast, that whole ballroom scene, number one, it was beautiful, breathtaking, and it just shined. It had that yellow.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Iconic. That is an iconic scene. When you look up Beauty and the Beast, when you like actually Google it, that is the first image you see, is them in their ball gowns in the ballroom.
Well, think about it this way too. I mean, it's iconic because that's what that in a way was the turning point where Disney started to really get behind this, because they saw this like, oh, this is good. Let's put more money into this. You know, all the things we've been talking about. I mean, this thing's been plagued with this is just basically never going to get made. This thing's just cursed. And then if you see that, like, oh wait, this could actually be good. And there's that operative word that everyone uses, actually.
And but then they used it, you know, in Lion King, when you have the wildebeests, the Stampede of the Wildebeests, which is done digitally. Oh. So they continue to use the digital format, and then of course, you know, this little company comes along called Pixar, you know, which Disney released, but they had no deal other than Pixar just had a distribution deal with Disney at the time. So Disney just distributed the Pixar movies, but that was the first full foray into digital technology. But Disney, at its time, was always in the forefront. You can look at a movie like The Black Hole. You can look at their movies like Tron, the original Tron. That was the first movie to fully integrate digital animation inside of a live-action movie. And when you look at Tron today, you can literally watch that movie and go, holy crap, I can't believe that movie was made back in the 80s. And it's been on cable. I own it. I watch it. To me, it still looks fresh, and it's a wonderful it's a beautifully rendered world. Going back to the animation and Beauty and the Beast, we've seen today how hand-drawn animation can work hand-in-hand with digital animation. But to me, maybe because I'm just old-fashioned, I love the hand-drawn. And Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid, and they're just they're so beautiful.
I miss it.
And their renderings. You know, the opening Broadway scene with Belle, you know, going through, it's such a beautiful scene. And when you match it with the music, you can't get that. Like, it's going to be hard. Like, it was so beautiful that I'm hoping that this live action, how is this going to translate?
Not to say that it's like the animation in this movie was simple or anything, because by no means could I ever. But like, it goes to show, I think that like the simple, or like, I feel like more story and depth is added to it.
Well, you were talking about Disney and Pixar, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because just the way, you know, while the backgrounds could be 3D in terms of the ballroom scene, but just the whole idea of scanning and whatever, that allowed it to be digital as well, because that wasn't part of the process up until that point. I mean, they termed it Computer Animation Production System, CAPS.
Right.
I don't know, Marisa, you love animation. Do you want me to continue or you want to take over?
Oh, well, I think it's interesting because, the CAPS was, we were talking about revolutionizing the animation process, but that program, that software, allowed them for having different colors, especially the ballroom. You can definitely tell all the different colors. So the wide range of colors, as well as shading and colored lines, effects for the characters. And it just allowed the production crew to simulate multi-plane effects. So, like, you have the foreground, you have the middle ground, you have the background, all within, and technically animation is only 2D.
Sure.
So in this 2D world, you're getting, like, a 3-plane perspective, which was so revolutionary back then.
Think about what they did. And again, go back to Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
Okay. Robert Zemeckis created a whole new camera system in order to capture, what Roger Rabbit is. So a camera can literally appear as if it's going around this like the character of Jessica Rabbit. When she does when she does her torch song in the club, the Ink and Paint Club, it's so beautifully rendered. And here she is amongst live actors. When you look at Beauty and the Beast, same thing. What made it revolutionary is the way that the camera was able to sweep around our animated characters set within this world, this beautiful ballroom. And again, it hadn't been done before. It really broke a barrier. And it's one of the reasons why it gets nominated for Best Picture. But they were using special effects as a tool. Like, it wasn't their means of telling the story. It was a tool to tell the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was so well done because, just reflecting on the movie itself, I can point out, like, multiple moments just in the ballroom scene. There was a particular shot where you see the chandelier in the foreground.
Right.
You see the two dancing in the middle ground, and you see the beautiful windows in the background. That's just your 3 multiplanes.
Right.
And that's just one shot of the whole ballroom scene.
Yeah.
And we also saw it when, during the whole mob scene at the end where they're walking forward and you see the forest and the singers and the castle. So there's just so many shots. Oh my God. It looked beautiful, especially for a film back then. And, when they were animating back in, 1990.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this movie comes out in 1991. Oh, here's another thing, too. They had 3 years to make the movie. One of those years was burned by, the concepts that they had before. So technically, once they made that decision to go into musical, they had 2 years to make this film happen.
Which is 2 years less than the normal animation production track schedule.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You're crap.
Yeah.
You got literally half the time.
Yeah. And that was a Katzenberg thing, too, because Katzenberg was very strict in setting up deadlines and goals of achievement and making sure that those were met. And the animators were like, yep, there were many pots, carafes, thermoses of coffee, and, late nights working on weekends to get the job done. But you're right, Phil. I mean, and look at the accomplishment of what they were able to do.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say there's a difference between meeting the deadline and creating a masterpiece. Because guess what? You tell me a deadline, I'll meet your deadline. It's going to be a piece of crap, but I'll meet your deadline if you need me to.
And again, I think it's a difference of times as well. The creative process, I think, back then, the word franchise, I mentioned, I rattled off a bunch of movies. It wasn't really the necessary thought process. You didn't think of doing a sequel to a movie.
Roy.
Huh? Say that again?
Unless you're Roy.
Unless you're Roy. But
From McDonald's, that's my inside joke.
But I thought you were talking Roy Disney. But
No.
now I get it, the founder.
Yes.
Not a Disney film. But think about when you think about the times in which these movies were being made, okay? Think of somebody like Eddie Murphy. Okay? Outside of Beverly Hills Cop, I can name Coming to America, 48 Hours, Trading Places, Golden Child. This guy was acting in movies. Now, again, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. it's no slight against this gentleman. He's a Boston boy. I love the guy. I think he's talented. Name me all the Chris Evans movies, theatrical movies.
Captain America.
Oh,
Every
that's
one of
not-
them's. Yeah, you got Fantastic Four. Everything's a franchise.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is actors had room to make other movies, much like Disney was making R-rated. They were making comedies, for crying out loud. They were making social satire movies, you know, and they were resurrecting Richard Dreyfuss's career along with Bette Midler. Hocus Pocus.
Oh, I love
Okay,
Bette
I know, but that's like a PG movie, but
Oliver and Company.
Oliver and Company.
Yes.
It's a great movie. Another animated with those animators.
Yes.
So when you look at the time and the creativity and script supervision and looking at and choosing scripts, Pretty Woman is another great example of, look at the Julia Roberts character in that movie, and that movie's rated R, okay? They don't make rated R movies at Disney anymore, people. They're not making rated R comedies anymore because they're a factory. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job at their factory, but that's where it is. I'm not sure the creative process, although under John Lasseter, I think John Lasseter has a good fix on animation. Hence, we're getting movies like Frozen and Moana and Tangled.
But I think that's the thing. Like back then, especially when they were creating this film, they weren't expecting to make it a franchise. They were making it as a one-off, isolated, strong, individual film.
An individual film
and I'm
to
so
stand on its
glad
own.
it wasn't really franchise. I mean,
To
we
be
got a
fair,
couple after.
they did then end up making Beauty and the Beast, Enchanted Christmas, Belle's Magical World.
Those are
They did.
all television Christmas specials and for home video release.
Yeah.
They weren't done as a theatrical. That's the other thing too.
So would Aladdin be the first one?
Aladdin be the first one.
For a sequel,
Jafar's Revenge, and then
Return of Jafar.
Well, but again, that didn't get released theatrically. That was home entertainment. That was home video. That's another thing that happened 80s and 90s that was a boon, and this really propelled Beauty and the Beast into that stratosphere, is that people were able to own the movie about a year after it came out. They were able to go into a Suncoast Motion Picture, which I worked for a short time.
Suncoast is
right?
great.
Suncoast, I worked
miss
there.
them.
You were able to go in and purchase the movie. The other amazing thing that Disney did was, on shelves for a limited time only, they created I must have. They created a must have this movie because within so many months, Disney would advertise it. Your time is running out. It is going to go into the vault.
The vault.
Going into the vault. It's going into the archives. We don't know how long it'll stay in there. Get your copy now.
Godforsaken vault.
The godforsaken vault. Now, something else.
But the best part was when it would come out of the vault too.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Coming out of the vault.
I didn't even know that I
the
needed that
animation.
movie.
It's so smart of Disney, though. As annoying of a promotional thing it is for them, it's so smart for marketing.
They wisely took advantage of the home entertainment market, right? And they did it in a fantastic way. Now they did something else, right? Because I have it. I was a Laserdisc person. I still am. I still have my player. They released, and this was what was amazing about Laserdiscs. Becca, you're looking at me like,
Yeah, I
what
don't
the
know.
hell is a Laserdisc?
Yeah, explain, please.
Picture a Blu-ray the size of an album, like a vinyl record.
I was thinking it was
I don't even
probably
think she
something
knows what
on
vinyl
Blu-ray. No, I know what a vinyl is.
Okay.
I definitely know what a vinyl is.
We call them records. Okay, I don't call them pieces of vinyl. It was a record. So
know
picture
that is
something
too.
that looks like a Blu-ray, except
Yeah.
it's that big. It's the size of a record. It's the
Okay.
size of an album, and it was a foray into digital. It was your movie. Okay, so you had a Laserdisc player. What it did for the CD, it did for movies. And what Disney did was, if you were and this is why I love Laserdisc as the movie geek I was, they released the New York Film Festival work in progress print of Beauty and the Beast, where it was released nowhere else. You couldn't get it on video. DVD hadn't existed yet. So the only way you could get this is if you were a Laserdisc owner. So I could see that black and white pencil sketch mixed with the color drawings that now is on every single release of Blu-ray release of Beauty and the Beast. You can get it on the 25th anniversary version, the Diamond Edition version of Beauty and the Beast. It was awesome. But again, Disney knew what the hell they had, and they would only do it with Beauty and the Beast, which is fantastic because they knew the commodity. It was such a commodity at the time.
They wanted to make people feel like they were like special and getting like something extra.
Yeah.
I want to move into the voice cast because I think we'd be remiss not to talk about any one of them. But let's start with the belle of the ball, Belle herself, Paige O'Hara. Now, as I understand it, they wanted to reuse the forgive me, I forget her name, but the same actress who played Ariel.
Jodie Benson.
Yeah.
That is her.
Who is Jodie Benson?
Good, that was very cool.
Thanks, Marisa.
Also.
And who is they were looking for a woman instead of a girl, as they quote it. Because that's what they were looking for. They were looking for someone to play Belle a little bit, I guess, older in a sense, more mature.
Yeah, they wanted the maturity, the voice that had maturity to it, and is someone, because once they knew it was a musical, they needed someone who can actually carry the voice, that can translate to the character, and I think it was great that they found Paige O'Hara, because she was in Broadway. She had that talent already, and she was in Showboat. That was her like big production that really put her into the spotlight. So she had the technical aspects to carry Belle as a voice.
She was
artist.
compared to Judy Garland.
Yeah.
That's quite a big comparison.
It's a big comparison. Also, I think it should be noted that it was Hal Ashman. Hal Ashman, when he came in, he said, "We're not going for stars here. We're gonna cast this as a Broadway play. We're going to cast it like we would, and we're going to look at Broadway for our cast." Everyone in the cast of Beauty and the Beast had Broadway chops, had theater chops to do it, and that's how Ashman wanted this, because he looked at this as a Broadway musical. So hiring Paige O'Hara, whose voice was.
Which is the exact
Broadway
opposite of the new
voices.
one coming out.
Right. Yes. Well, the thing also, Paige O'Hara at the time, she was 30, so she was a woman. She was already of the age, and she had the actual mature voice.
Yeah, and she could act. They needed people who could act and who can sing. And the beauty about animation is, like today, we're sort of, in today's world, we are sort of conditioned to, when it comes to voice talent, we need to hire...
Look for someone younger.
Well, but also star quality, you know, to attach...
I mean, Zootopia. I mean, like, that list of people that's in Zootopia.
Yeah, right.
It's a thing that we're conditioned to do where, again, back in the day, nobody really knew who the hell did Ariel's voice. We learned about her after the movie came out. Same thing with Paige O'Hara. Unless you were in New York and you went to Broadway, I didn't know any of these people, really. We may have... Angela Lansbury had made a name for herself. She could have been outside
As
of
an
maybe
actress.
Robbie Benson at the time, too. I mean, he was in this hit called of a movie called Ice Castles. You know, he had somewhat of a following, but Orbach at the time, like, you might recognize in a movie, but a lot of these people... You just didn't know who they were because they came from Broadway theater.
And the great thing is that Paige O'Hara, she actually had to audition for this role. It wasn't handed to her like, you know, I think a lot of people now are, you know, offered roles. And she had to work for this as well. So she won this role fair and square.
To be fair, I mean, I really, on a side note, I wish animation was more like that, because so much of the time is spent sometimes of like, who's that voice?
Who is that voice?
Yeah.
I agree with
please, you. And people do this to me. I'm like, just because like of anatomy, like, who is that? I'm like, I don't know. Shut up. Leave me the hell alone. I'm watching the movie.
Yeah.
On a social media side of things, I was like looking up all the voices of everyone last night, and I was surprised that the people who do have social media accounts that are official right now don't have much following.
Oh, like me.
And two, they aren't really like talked about if you go and like hit their name in the search bar
Right.
on like Twitter.
Yeah.
I think
for
we're entering a
instance.
new generation. I mean, I think no, in the sense that now I think people will see this movie, but I think now it is going to be very much a passing the torch onto this new movie that's about to come out.
Yeah, and you gotta remember, like, back in the 90s, like, these people were casted based on their talents, not
Yes.
not
Which I like.
Not for
bookability.
it wasn't
Yeah.
for their box office.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
for, like, the ability to get people to pay tickets and get butts in the seats. It was for the people who can actually carry films and talent and characters.
Yeah.
I think they were more worried about if the movie could carry itself, let alone the actors.
Yeah.
No,
But like
it's-
nowadays,
you're right,
it's
Phil.
like we book, like Phil was saying, we book all
People
these
are
A-list
popular.
names just to get people's in the theaters.
It's
And back then, it wasn't like that.
It's to try to get box office, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what would happen if like Disney for the next live action thing had a list of people who we didn't know who they were.
No, it won't happen.
I'd be
But
interested.
There's
But
too
that's
much
the
money.
thing.
There's
If you
just too
do
much money
that,
involved.
if you do that, no one's going to see it because no one wants to see people who they don't know.
To
I'd
be
see
fair, the
it.
only person I want is James Earl Jones to come back to The Lion King. That's just
Okay.
I'd be
such an
fine with
iconic
that.
voice. But
You know,
apart
I
from
mean-
that, I could care less.
And look, even when you look at the Jungle Book, okay, you had Bill Murray, Scarlett
Elba.
Johansson,
Christopher
Idris
Walken.
Elba, Christopher Walken. Okay, it just this is what we're conditioned to because the thought process being, well, the kids don't give a crap who these people are, but if we want the adults to come, they want to they want to be able to know that there's a star quality, a celebrity quality that's involved with it.
Yeah.
When it wasn't always that way. To my recollection, and again, if somebody could, you're looking at Little Mermaid, you had Buddy Hackett. Buddy Hackett was the seagull in that movie. I knew who Buddy Hackett was. Going into Beauty and the Beast, going into Lion King, James Earl Jones's voice at that point. But you had Iago was Godfrey
Yeah.
there, who people knew of as a comedian. But the biggest casting, I think, is when they went into Pocahontas and you hire Mel
Mel
Gibson.
Gibson.
Like he, at the time, probably the biggest A-lister that Disney
Braveheart,
could have
all of
brought
this stuff.
into an animated movie. I mean, it was a big deal. You didn't really, I can't even tell you the name of the other people
Pocahontas.
who were in Pocahontas.
It's very true.
That's
But,
right.
Well,
but it was
you
Mel
also
Gibson.
had
Mel Gibson.
Christian Bale was also in that film too.
Yes.
You got to remember that.
Yeah,
And
but Christian
Pocahontas.
Bale. Who the hell was Christian Bale?
He played Thomas.
I get that, but you get what I'm saying. Who
Yeah.
the hell was Christian
At
Bale
that
at that time?
people,
Oh, he had Newsies out.
yeah, people
Like,
didn't see
Newsies.
Yeah, no.
Broadway.
Newsies was a big Broadway.
Yeah, but they didn't know. No one went to see Newsies because of Christian Bale as the headline.
And-
Christian
and
Bale and
Actually,
Newsies.
nobody went and saw Newsies theatrically.
Yeah, no one did.
No one saw it theatrically.
So-
But, I'm just saying their first foray in getting that big A-list. I mean, Mel Gibson at the time, Jesus. I mean, forget
Big-
about just the Lethal Weapon movies.
Big name.
He was doing comedies with Goldie Hawn. He was, he was a bona fide star
A-list.
at the time. And I don't know the time period, so I'm not sure if he had made Braveheart just yet. But the guy's a
I'll
bona
ch-
fide star.
I'll check real fast.
Pocahontas was 1995.
Braveheart may have come out. Yeah, Braveheart. Yeah, he
Braveheart
already
was
had
95,
Yeah, he had Braveheart, I think, under his belt already. I guess what I'm getting at is, you starring A-listers wasn't necessarily the priority. And when you look at a Beauty and the Beast, and even Little Mermaid to an extent, but more so Beauty, going for the Broadway talent only lends, I think, to the quality of this movie, because I didn't care necessarily who was voicing Belle. I just knew that it made Belle more beautiful as, as an animation.
And I think, having Broadway actors, singers made the music more
Yeah, I was
impactful
gonna
too,
say that.
because we're still singing these songs.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I'd like to knock out La La Land because they didn't Yeah, your favorite movie. But like they didn't hire singers to sing those songs.
Sure.
In 20 years, those songs will literally be irrelevant. In another 20 years, the songs of Beauty and the Beast will still be relevant.
Yeah. And they
That's true.
rehearsed as if they were on Broadway.
Yeah.
They rehearsed the movie as if it were a play.
And think about it this way: like in an animation, you kind of have to go a little bit over the top, right? When you're doing a play, you have to project. You have to do.
you
Yeah.
have to do it
To
for the
sing
cheap
to the
seats.
last
Yeah.
person in the room.
Yeah. So animation, because all you have is your voice to really give life into this. Besides the animation itself, you have to
Go
to
over the
give it go for that.
You have to be animated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a
I guess.
comparison there.
It took me a second.
That's okay. Sometimes my jokes come back in rerun.
What were you gonna say, Becca? I
boomerang.
cut you off.
No, I was laughing at that and then I got distracted and forgot
I'm
what
a fan
happened.
of one.
Six.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
No, but you're right, Phil. And like, there is, and who's gonna know how to project?
Better
other
than
these
Broadway
people?
singers.
And when you have Menken and Ashman, more or less, there, okay, how are you going to rehearse this? And how does that help your animators? How does that help your directors? Right? Again, it's this lightning in a bottle that even the producer, the Han, said, after Beauty and the Beast, the edict at Disney was, we need to release 2 of these a year. And they split up the team. Like that team, that full-on animated team, never worked together again. Like,
Always a smart idea.
yeah. I mean, some of the people, 1 or 2 people may have worked together, but as a team, that was it. Something else that was very telling about the movie as well is that when it came time for it to be seen, okay? Another thing that Disney did, which is sort of kind of unheard of at the time, is they had 2020 follow the cast and crew around while they're making this movie, okay? This was during the production. At the time, nobody knew what they had, okay? And then Disney says, Disney's seeing what they like. And for the first time, they're saying, the animators as a group, they were feeling good about the movie. They felt that they had magic. They felt that they were on to something. And then the execs say, you're going to take it to the New York Film Festival and show it. And they're like, the movie's not done yet. Doesn't matter.
Oh, well.
We want you to. It's like, no, but you don't understand. Those are just pencil sketches. And then we have some scenes like, how can we do that? It's like, show it. So they took it to New York. And it was still in black and white pencil form, mixed in with some color, mixed in with some finished animation. And it brought the house down. And they were watching it at, I believe it was the Ziegfeld Theater. And they, as the directors say, we were sitting in the balcony and we had a flop sweat. 2020's there. Like, our failure, as easily as our success, could have been recorded for posterity. Like, and if it was a failure, that's it. That's done. We're over. We're never gonna have a. And think about it. It harkens back to Snow White, because if Snow White had not been a success in playing at the Carthay Theater, the Carthay Circle Theater, Disney's career would have been done. He poured everything into Snow White. And had it not had that one premiere night at the Carthay Circle Theater that went gangbusters, we may not have Disney as we know of Disney today. Same thing with Beauty and the Beast. If Beauty and the Beast failed, animation for Disney may have gone a completely different route, if it went anywhere at all.
Well, this kind of goes a little bit later in the timeline, but it has a rare cinema score of A+. So I'm sure the fact that you could receive it well in whatever not complete form, then yeah, I mean that says something a lot about a movie, because trust me, I've been there, and it's like, listen, if you don't understand the process, you're gonna look at this and be like, what is this piece of crap?
Right. And they explain the process. Marisa, which versions do you have? Do you own?
Well, it comes with, each thing comes with the, I think they include that version.
Well, they have.
I have
I don't
a
know how
newer
far-
release.
I don't know how
DVD.
far back.
I don't have the Blu-ray, but I do have a newer release.
Does
But
it have that version on that release?
It added a Human Again musical number to it.
And does it have the
And
New
I
York
have the
Film
VHS.
Festival?
No.
Okay, because I know at least the Diamond Edition and the 25th Anniversary Edition has the New York Film Festival version. Now, here's another thing, too. Let's talk about its production budget at the time, $25 million, which late 80s, early 90s, $25 million for an animated movie. It's a lot of money. And they already scrapped a couple of versions of the film. So, again, if the movie did not work, animation to Disney would have taken a drastic turn. So.
Absolutely. Should we talk about the various accolades it did win?
Sure.
Obviously, I guess let's start with Golden Globes. It was nominated for Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, Best Original Score, and Best Original Song. And it won all of those.
Yeah, it won the Golden Globe Award for Best Motion Picture for Musical or Comedy. And then for not just the Golden Globes, but it also for Academy Award.
I was
Best-
getting there, but I'll let you.
yeah.
I'll let you take it.
Okay. Well, not
Be my guest.
Yeah. Thank you. But I'm this. All right. It won Academy Award for Best Original Score and a Best Original Song for its title. Yeah.
It's tough to. I mean, it also had 3 songs nominated, so it's tough to lose
When you
when you have
Yeah.
3 out
Like
of.
half the-
And on top,
nominations.
it was also, we mentioned it before, nominated for Best Picture, which is
Wait.
the ultimate award.
And Best Sound
Picture.
Mixing.
And-
But Best Picture at a time when they didn't have 10 slots to fill. So, are you curious to know what it was up against?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, we already know Beauty and the Beast. It was up against Prince of Tides, a Barbra Streisand movie, JFK, Oliver Stone, Kevin Costner, and Bugsy, Warren Beatty movie that he directed. And the winner that year, 1991, goes to Silence of the Lambs. Jonathan Demme, Jodie Foster. Obviously, now that wins best. That one Best Director, Best Picture. Now,
Best Actress.
something that need to be said too is, and this is part of the reason why we now have this animated category. Personally, I think if you're a movie like Beauty and the Beast, you deserve Best Picture.
Yeah.
You're a great picture, okay? A lot of people, look, I'm a film geek. I'm a movie geek, okay? Some people can call me snobby, whatever, but there are a lot of people in the industry who are very snobbish about what the hell is Beauty and the Beast doing in Best Picture? What the hell? Like, why? It's not. You're taking away from a real movie, okay? Those people, I say, F you to, because this is. Do you not understand the creativity and the artistry that's involved in making this film? And add to that, look at the emotional impact that you're getting from. I would say that Beauty and the Beast, for me anyways, far outweighs Prince of Tides, JFK, and Bugsy. Okay? I'm not upset that Silence of the Lambs won. I think Silence of the Lambs is a good choice. It still is relevant and as scary today as it was back then, but Beauty and the Beast also stands in that category where it too is a movie that has stood the test of time. And just because it's animated does not mean it's not taking away from anything. You know who took away? Viola Davis took away from supporting actor when she said that takes away.
But sticking
Beauty
to
and
apples to apples, you have 10 nominations and you're not even
Right.
using them.
No.
To
you're
be
not
fair,
even-
the
right.
joke that wasn't used, which I found out, was the Best Picture category went to the 9 movies in which Kevin Hart wasn't in. That's the way they did it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so that's a 5 features are nominated, and those at that time in 1991 could be argued that those are the best pictures to nominate. But Beauty and the Beast, I think, is as deserving. But I also believe that there are animated movies that belong in Best Picture category, not just Best Animated. And I think if somebody can double check my facts too, I think the next time that an animated movie fell under that category was Up, in which it was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
And but it had the Best Animated category. Again, it's a waste of a slot because you have Best Animation. It's not going to win Best Picture. They're going to give it to it as the animation, which I believe it won.
I just want to know who these people are who didn't think that Beauty and the Beast deserved it, to be nominated in that category, because I would want to ask them, if they can make a movie like that, to be honest.
To be fair, okay, so, let me just read off a couple other movies. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Why that wasn't nominated is beyond, anyone. But then, you kind of look at the rest of the list. You have Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. That didn't do so well. Point Break, Cape Fear. That's, Thelma and Louise, Boys in the Hood, Addams Family, City Slickers, Fisher King, Hook came out that year, Rocketeer. What about Bob? That's actually a good movie.
Well, again, I believe that's a rated R. Rated R.
Which one? What about Bob?
Touchstone. I think that was rated R. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think there's
sure.
a lot of F-bombs. But, all right, well, since you're going 1991, let's take a look at the domestic grosses. The number one movie of 1991 was Terminator 2, which I could have swore won for special effects. But $204 million. Now, here's the rub, folks. It made $204 million on less than 2,500 theaters.
And you're talking Judgment Day.
I'm talking Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was number 2 with a gross of $165 million plus dollars. Again, 2,300 plus locations. Okay. Beauty and the Beast was number 3. Number 3 with $145 million. You want to know what its largest theaters was? Not even 2,000. 1,960 theaters. Beauty and the Beast opened up. And this is a play...
Higher per screen
again,
average.
Huge per screen average, but we're also talking of a time when there weren't the multiplexes of today. So we're not seeing 5 screens of Beauty and the Beast. You're seeing one. One screen of Beauty and the Beast at your theater. So that's where you're going. You're really getting a great location average on that. Now, it bested out Silence of the Lambs, which, a horror movie at the time, $130 million. That was the number 4 movie. The number 5 movie was City Slickers, which did $124 million. Hook. Your Hook did $119 million.
People hated that movie.
The Addams Family.
Such a good movie.
Was the Addams Family was number 7 with 113. Sleeping with the Enemy, another Julia Roberts movie, 101 million.
But
Father of the Bride.
That also goes to show because they do a lot of stats nowadays that people or movies that gross more films have a better chance of winning Best Picture. They tend to go hand in hand with that correlation. But we see that Beauty and the Beast grossed higher than Silence of the Lambs, and Silence of the Lambs won.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, when you look at Moonlight and its gross compared to, when you look at movies like The Artist or The Hurt Locker or even No Country for Old Men. But the number 10 movie, it's a great movie, The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. Okay, 86 million. And that's just the top 10. But you're right, Phil. You had movies like Backdraft, Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2,
Great
Cape
movie
Fear,
in my book.
Prince of Tides, JFK, Hot Shots, What About Bob? Hey, 101 Dalmatians was re-released that year. The Last Boy Scout, great Shane Black, Tony Scott movie, Doc Hollywood, Boys in the Hood, My Girl, The Rocketeer, Thelma and Louise, Regarding Henry, The Fisher King. 1991, you had some really solid movies to go to throughout that year. Many of these movies I just mentioned never had a sequel. My Girl 2 did, but Rocketeer, Thelma and Louise obviously didn't. But, Doc Hollywood didn't, but it's a great fish out of water story, even to today. And Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast, of course, made its revival. You said you were involved. I want to know more about this. You said you were involved in many stage productions.
Yeah,
of
stage
Beauty and the
production. Well,
Beast.
you know, once Beauty and the Beast, because of its success, was the first animated film to be translated to Broadway.
Right.
And I performed and also was on the production side of 2 different on-stage productions of Beauty and the Beast that had the added scores from Mencken himself that he did after the movie, but he translated it for and composed it just for the Broadway. So there are more songs that I know of Beauty and the Beast that weren't in the film but are now on Broadway.
Right. So who were you?
Who are you? Oh, God. Yes, if you guys want to look it up, I was a dish. And I was a wolf. I was one of the main wolves that helped take the beast down in the forest. You're welcome. And then, so that was the first production. And then my second production, I was Spotlight.
There you go. Becca,
Hi.
I forced you, which I don't know why
Sorry.
I had to
Sorry,
force
again.
you to watch the musical. What did you think?
Okay, I finished most of it or some of it, and
Why haven't you watched it before?
Wait, what are
I
we
don't
talking
know.
about?
The musical.
I don't know. My
Or the
parents never,
theater production.
I never
You know what?
went.
I haven't seen it.
I never went.
Where do you see it?
All she does is see musicals.
Okay, I've seen 3 different Broadway versions of
Becca's
Beauty and
watching
the
a
Beast.
musical right now.
Okay. So, I've now seen part of it.
Okay. What'd you think?
I like the added songs. Cause I mean, as I said before, like the reason I love this movie, and the reason I like these types of movies in general is because of the songs. Like I judge.
You know, everyone
I-
hangs on to every word, but not in a good way. Sorry, Becca.
So you haven't heard all of the songs.
I haven't,
But
like I judge, I judge movies like these based on the songs, and
Okay.
I think
Like
what
on 1, 2,
Broadway
1, 2, 3.
does so well is that it fills in the gaps that for musical numbers and the transitional that the film itself doesn't, because granted the animated film is only like an hour
Yeah.
24 minutes. And you can see like people are plotting different storylines, but the musical numbers like really add more layers to the characters. Like Home is an amazing song for Broadway that was added to Belle. Once her first night in captivity at the castle, she realizes she literally just lost her freedom. She sings a whole song about that. No one does it better than Susan Egan, by the way. Just saying. And just a couple of weeks ago, Susan Egan quoted me on Twitter, and I about died.
She did die.
For those who don't know who Susan Egan is, she was the first original Belle for the first production of Beauty and the Beast on Broadway.
Yeah,
and
she owes me
she's
money.
amazing. And AKA, she was also the voice of Megara and Hercules, also Disney. Besides that. But like the
I haven't
songs,
seen it.
there are so many songs that were added to make us understand the characters even more and go more in depth. And we learn who Monsignor Dark is. He's the person who runs the sanitarium. That puts, the father.
The father.
And there's a whole song about Gaston and LeFou plotting of putting Belle's father away. So crazy old Maurice.
A thought I just came up with was that musicals versus movies in like the stage productions, I feel like songs tell the story more so, going off that.
Yeah, they flesh out the story way
Yeah.
better.
But my argument. Okay, I haven't seen the Broadway thing. Couldn't
Don't worry, I
afford
got you.
But I think even for a movie musical, whether it be Beauty and the Beast, or whether it be My Fair Lady, or Music Man, Nightmare Before Christmas, I feel that the music cinematically, it has to move the story along. It has to. I guess too, like, if you're gonna pick on La La Land, like, some of the music didn't push the story along. It was very for the scene. But when you look at some of the musical greats, like whether it's South Pacific or like the songs come at a time where it's needed and to move the story along. Now, something that they were talking about in the making of Beauty and the Beast and why they decided to, one of the reasons they decided to make it a musical was you can't put forward that kind of dialogue in straight dialogue and have it work. Okay? It's going to sound silly and dopey, but under the guise of a musical, you can get away with it so long as your music is good, you have good performances, you have good talent to sing it and belt it out, it works. But to do it straightforward, that dialogue does not work. It comes off as corny. It just wouldn't work. That was one of the deciding factors of making Beauty and the Beast a musical. That, and of course, you have to believe that the success of The Little Mermaid, which again is a musical, the seaweed is always greener in somebody else's plate. These songs perpetuate the plot. They move it forward. Mm-hmm. Our characters too go into singing and dancing, much like in Beauty and the Beast. But even your live action musicals or Nightmare Before Christmas,
Yeah, right, because even in the Broadway version of Beauty and the Beast, there are musical score numbers that Maurice sings while he's riding, while he's horse riding into the woods that lead him to the castle. Like, even the transitional moments from scene to scene to scene, there's music, there's singing that gets us from point A to point B that the film doesn't cover.
Yeah. The producers, Mel Brooks' foray into Broadway.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's... And also, I understand the flip side of why people hate musicals. I mean, I get it. They hate seeing people all of a sudden break into song and dance.
I think it's great.
Whether it's West Side Story, they don't like it. And it's like, okay, it's just like some people don't like black and white movies. Stuff like that. It's a question of taste. I don't mind me a good musical, so long as it doesn't bore me to tears, and
I love musicals. I think the world would be a better place if people broke out into song and dance.
I used to do that in my apartment.
No, some people can't sing. It wouldn't be a better place. If I were to
song
song and
La La
dance...
Land excuse.
No. You don't want to see me singing and dancing.
We don't?
I mean, no.
After this.
I do it on
Absolutely
a daily
not.
occasion.
All right, folks, this is about that time to start wrapping it up. So as such, any final thoughts? We'll go to you, Becca Brown.
Uh-oh.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so trying to get to the trivia part because
We're doing a trivia part?
well, I liked something I saw last night about as far as final thoughts.
So what is it? What do we got?
I saw a fun fact that if you freeze the frame on Gaston's face towards the end, you see skulls in his eyes, and that I wanted to share
If you freeze the
that.
frame towards the end, you see skulls in Gaston's eyes. That's
When
what
he gets through, I guess,
Before
pitched
he
off the
dies,
castle.
like literally when he falls
Yeah.
to his death, apparently there's a
I was
frame.
like, that's interesting.
This is another Disney lore and legend that that came about when animators were making these movies. Okay, things like Blu-ray, things even such as VHS, which you can pause.
Right.
Okay, people weren't thinking about this technology, right? So, and again, you can look it up on Google. There's lots of lore, like in The Lion King.
Yes.
There is a scene where Simba, I believe it's Simba, falls in the... He just lays down and a cloud of sand comes up. And it happens so fast, but the word sex, the animators put into the cloud. But it happens so fast, the only way that you can see it is if you pause it.
Yep.
Right? So all this Disney, call it sexcapades. Again, just Google it.
Subliminal messages.
Subliminal messaging. The animators were throwing in on purpose for fun because they're like, nobody's ever going to see this. It's happening so fast. But then when DVD came out, you could literally pause, you could see all of the
Becca's
stuff.
mind is blown.
They have since a lot of it digitally taken out. But just Google it. Just
No, it's true.
Google
There's
animated
so many.
Disney Subliminal
I think
That
my childhood is
mermaid.
ruined.
Marisa, final thoughts for you.
I loved this film. I still love it. Obviously, I go literally to every Beauty and the Beast production that's available towards me. I saw Beauty and the Beast in Disney World. That's how much I love this. When they were putting, I was like, we just did a musical play on it, but I'm gonna see their version down in freaking Disney World.
Was it fun?
Oh, it was great. What are you talking about? Yes, I have it on video. I love it. I love the story. I love the characters, the message of it, the overall visual aesthetics of it. Everything about this film was just done so right as a film to make it solid as a picture. It stands the test of time and will be a tale as old as time.
I agree, and being that you mentioned trivia, do you know songs take up 25 minutes of the film and only 5 minutes were without any music score at all? Interesting.
Really?
Yeah, so this is according to IMDb trivia.
That when
Yeah.
Cogsworth and Lumiere are talking in the
You know,
hall.
yeah, I think Beauty and the Beast has definitely stood the test of time. I think even to today's standards, it's a beautiful film to behold and to watch for generations, for generations of people. Whether you're young, you're old, I think it's just a wonderful film. I go into this live action one, I will be honest, I go into this live action movie with a little bit of trepidation. Not that I'm not looking forward to it. I am. I think it'll look beautiful. Thus far, Disney has done a fantastic job with Cinderella, the Jungle Book. But this movie was already such a beautifully rendered film. My biggest fear is that it'll be a shot-for-shot remake. And then my question will be, well, why? Now, I already know that they've made some changes. It's come out in the news this past week. I won't say them here in case you don't pay attention to news.
Tune into that anatomy.
But there have already been some changes, which is fine. That at least shows that it's not going to be a complete shot for shot. But from what they've showed me in the trailers, it looks like a shot for shot. I love the talent involved in this movie. It's making me wonder. Again, it goes back to creativity over the factory. Like, do I need to see every single movie become live action? When on its own it's a classic already. So that's a question we can tackle later.
Well, you'll find out the week after March 17th when the new Beauty and the Beast comes out. Thank you guys for listening, and let us know your thoughts and opinions on this movie. And definitely check back in for the latest one. There'll be nice 2 companion pieces. That way we don't have to spend as much history talking about this one because we'll just let you see this episode. Nonetheless, thank you guys for joining us at the Popcorn Talk, at DMovie1701, at Serafini TV, at Becca Talks TV. We're out!
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.